They say a marriage dies not with a bang, but with 1,000 silent cuts. Mine died in the squeal of tires on wet asphalt, the shattering of glass, and the 23 minutes I spent pinned in the wreckage, listening to my husband save another woman first. My name is Serafina, and this is where the story of the old me ends. Caleb, Caleb, please. The rain was a drum solo on the crumpled roof of our Subaru. I tasted copper, felt the warm trickle down my temple. Something was very wrong with my leg. A jagged, white-hot pain that pulsed with every heartbeat. The airbag had deployed, a deflated ghost covered in fine white powder that smelled like fireworks and regret. Outside, chaos. Sirens wailed in the distance. Getting closer, someone was crying. A horn blared incessantly from the car in front of us. A stuck, droning note of distress. I managed to turn my head. Caleb was already out of the car. The driver's side door hung open, the interior light casting a weak yellow pool on the flooded road. He was standing there, in his civvies the jeans and gray Henley I'd bought him for his birthday, assessing the scene like it was a training exercise. Not a husband looking for his wife, a first responder on the clock. Caleb, I tried again, my voice a rasp. The pain in my chest spiked. Broken rib, probably. He glanced back at me, just a glance. In the half-light, his face was all sharp, professional angles. Hold on. Sarah, I'm triaging. Just hold on. Triage the word. Cold and clinical. Landed in the pit of my stomach, heavier than the pain. He moved away, toward a small blue Honda Civic that had spun and hit the guardrail. Its front end was accordioned. A woman's figure was visible behind the steam rising from the radiator. She was moving, her arms flailing weakly at the airbag. I watched him go. The rain plastered his dark hair to his forehead. He didn't run to me. He jogged, with that efficient, energy-conserving stride they teach them at the fire academy. Toward the other car, a strange calm descended. The world narrowed to the view through my shattered windshield. The rhythmic swish of the one working wiper blade. The red glow of taillights refracting in a million raindrops. And my husband, firefighter Caleb Vance, hero of Maple Creek, prying open the door of the Civic. I saw him lean in, saw him speak to her. His posture was different, softer, more curved, protective. I knew that posture. It was the one he used to use with me, a lifetime ago, when I'd had a nightmare or a bad day at work. He'd cradle me, and his whole body would become a shield. He wasn't my shield anymore. He was hers. Nan, can you hear me? What's your name? His voice, calm and commanding, carried through the rain. A faint, sobbing reply. Eska Skylar. My arm, it hurts. Okay, Skylar. I'm Caleb. I'm a firefighter. You're going to be okay. Just stay still for me. Skylar. Of course her name was Skylar. Something soft and pretty and needing rescue. I fumbled for my phone. My fingers slick with blood. It had flown to the passenger side footwell. I stretched, and a lightning bolt shot from my ankle to my hip. I bit back a scream, tears mixing with the rain on my face. My phone. Just get the phone. Call 911 myself. Tell them there was a woman here, in a Subaru, whose husband had forgotten about her. But the pain was a thick, black fog, pushing at the edges of my vision. I let my hand fall. Time became elastic. A minute felt like an hour. I counted his breaths. I counted the beats of the distant sirens. I counted the number of times he said, "You're okay, Skylar. I've got you." He never once said my name. He extracted her carefully. She was slim, blonde. Even in the gloom, I could see that. Young, maybe mid-20s. She clung to him as he lifted her, her good arm around his neck. He carried her to the shoulder of the road, away from the traffic, and set her down gently, propping her against the guardrail. He shrugged out of his Henley, revealing the white tee beneath, and wrapped it around her shoulders. The gesture was so intimate, so tender. It stole the air from my lungs more effectively than the cracked rib. Then, and only then, did he turn and jog back to me. He peered in through the window. "Hey, you hanging in there?" The absurdity of it, the bland, cheerful hey, after 23 minutes, broke something open inside me. It wasn't sadness. It was a clear, cold fury, cutting through the shock and pain. "What the hell? Caleb?" My voice was stronger now, sharp as glass. He blinked, surprised. "It's a multi-car pileup. Sarah." I had to assess. She was in a more unstable vehicle. The Civic's fuel line was compromised. He was quoting protocol. He was explaining triage to me. His wife of 10 years. As I bled in our car. "You left me here. I secured the scene first. It's procedure." He tried the door on my side, but it was jammed shut, bent in the frame. "Damn it. Okay, don't move. The ambulances are 2 minutes out. They'll need the jaws." You wrapped your shirt around her. A pause. The professional mask slipped for just a second, and I saw a flash of something like guilt. Quickly buried. She was going into shock. It's basic first aid. For God's sake, are you really doing this now? Am I really doing this now? The question hung in the wet, metallic air between us. Yes, I was doing this now, because now was all I had. Trapped in this metal coffin while my husband stood outside it, treating me like a difficult victim, a complication in his well-managed rescue scene. The sirens arrived with a shriek, red and blue lights painting the rain in garish strokes. Suddenly, the world was full of people in uniform. Paramedics swarmed Skylar first. Of course, Caleb was pointing, giving a rapid report. Female, mid-20s, possible fractured left radius, signs of concussion. I've already stabilized her. Then he led 2 paramedics over to me. "My wife," he said, and the word sounded foreign on his tongue. "Serafina Vance. Possible head lack. Broken rib on the right side, and her left leg is pinned. She's conscious and alert." Alert, yes, I was painfully, exquisitely alert. Alert to the way the young female paramedic's eyes flicked between Caleb and me. A flicker of confusion in her gaze. Alert to the way Caleb stood back, letting the professionals work. His arms crossed over his damp white t-shirt. His job was done. The extraction took time. The metallic groan of the jaws of life tearing my door open was the sound of my old life being pried apart. They braced my neck, slid a backboard under me. The pain was a living thing, but I clenched my teeth. Silent. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of hearing me cry out. Not now. As they lifted me onto the gurney, I caught a glimpse of Skylar. She was already on a gurney, and 4 in her arm, a blanket tucked around her. She was looking at Caleb, her eyes wide and swimming with tears. "Thank you," she mouthed silently. He gave her a small, professional nod, the hero's acknowledgement. Then he was at my side as they wheeled me toward the open doors of the ambulance. "I'll ride with you," he said, reaching for my hand. I pulled mine away. A small, painful movement. "Don't. Sarah, come on. Don't be like this." It was an emergency situation. "Go ride with Skylar," I said, my voice flat. I'm sure she'd appreciate the comfort. His face hardened. The concerned husband act evaporated, replaced by a familiar impatience. The one he used when I didn't understand the demands of his calling. When I complained about another missed anniversary dinner, another lonely night waiting up for a man who was always saving everyone else. "You're being irrational. You know I had to. I know exactly what you had to do." I cut him off, meeting his eyes, for the first time in years. I held his gaze without flinching, without backing down. The cold clarity was back. You had to be the hero, even if the victim was me. The paramedic, a burly guy named Mike according to his tag, cleared his throat. "Sir, we need to go." Caleb stepped back, running a hand through his hair, frustration rolling off him in waves. "I'll meet you at Maple Creek General. We'll talk then." They closed the doors. The ambulance started to move, the siren a low wail. Mike busied himself with my vitals, his touch gentle. Hantai, Mrs. Vance. Not long now. Mrs. Vance. The name felt like a skin I was about to shed. The emergency room at Maple Creek General was a blur of fluorescent lights and controlled panic. They whisked me away for x-rays, a CT scan. A doctor with tired eyes confirmed a fractured fibula, 2 broken ribs, a concussion, and a laceration on my scalp that needed 15 stitches. "You're lucky," he said, not unkindly, as a nurse set my leg in a temporary cast. It could have been much worse. Lucky. I turned the word over in my mind. Was I? I was alive. But as they wheeled me into a semi-private room, the numbness of shock was wearing off, replaced by a deep, throbbing ache that had nothing to do with my bones. They'd just got me settled, the bed adjusted to a semi-sitting position, when I heard voices in the hallway. Familiar voices. Caleb's, low and reassuring. "The doctor said it's just a hairline fracture. You'll be in a cast for a bit, but it'll heal clean." And hers, Skylar's, breathier, younger. I was so scared. And then you were just there, like an angel. A soft chuckle from Caleb, a sound I hadn't heard directed at me in months, maybe years. Just doing my job. "Skylar, it was more than that. You were so calm. You made me feel safe." My heart hammered against my broken ribs. I held my breath, listening. "Well, you are safe. Everything's going to be okay. I promise. I promise." He used to promise me things. Too. To be home for dinner. To make it to my gallery opening. To try for a baby next year. Promises that dissolved like sugar in the rain of his ever more urgent calls. His extra shifts. His sudden, last-minute team commitments. The curtain around my bed was drawn, but the gap near the wall was about an inch wide. I shifted, just enough to see. They were standing right outside my room. Skylar was in a hospital gown, her left arm in a sling. She looked pale, delicate, and Caleb was standing close. Too close. His hand was on her good shoulder, a comforting, proprietary touch. He was looking down at her with an expression of focused concern that was a parody of the one he'd given me through the car window. "Is your wife going to be all right?" Skylar asked, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. She looked really mad. Caleb sighed, the long-suffering sound I knew so well, the sound that preceded explanations about how stressful his job was, how I just didn't understand the pressures he was under. "Serafina," she gets emotional. "It was a traumatic event." She doesn't always see the bigger picture in a crisis. The bigger picture was his hand on another woman's shoulder, in a hospital hallway, while I lay broken in the next room. The bigger picture was the 23 minutes. The shirt, the promise. Skylar nodded sympathetically. It must be hard, being married to a hero. The waiting, the worry. It takes a special kind of person, Caleb said, and his voice was thick with a meaning I didn't want to decipher. He finally dropped his hand. "You should get back to bed. They're keeping you overnight for observation. I'll check on you later." "You will." Her face lit up. "Of course." He watched her walk unsteadily back to a room a few doors down. Then he turned, and the expression on his face shifted. The gentle concern for Skylar melted away, replaced by a set, determined jaw, the face of a man preparing for a difficult task. He took a deep breath and pushed open my door. He'd brought flowers, a pathetic, gas station bouquet of drooping carnations and baby's breath. He held them out like a peace offering. "Hey," he said, forcing a smile. "They said you'll be okay. A few weeks of rest, some physical therapy. Good as new." I said nothing. I just watched him. The smile faltered. He set the flowers on the bedside table. "Look, Sarah, about before, in the ambulance. You were in shock. I get it, but you can't seriously think I was choosing her over you. It's triad. It's what I'm trained to do. The Civic was a mess. You were stable." "Stable," I repeated, the word a dry leaf in my mouth. Yes, conscious, breathing. She was disoriented. Her car was smoking. I called your name. My voice was quiet, deadly calm. 3 times. You looked at me, and you walked away. He had the decency to look uncomfortable. He shifted his weight. Honey, in a mass casualty incident, you can't let personal feelings cloud your judgment. You have to go where you're needed most. It's not about love. It's about logistics. Logistics are marriage, reduced to a logistics problem. You wrapped your shirt around her. Jesus, are you back on that? She was freezing. It was a human kindness. You promised her everything would be okay. That stopped him. He blinked. It's what you say to a victim in shock. It's standard. Is that what I am? Caleb? I asked, finally looking directly at him. The man I'd shared a bed with for a decade. The man whose coffee I made every morning. Whose uniforms I'd carefully washed free of soot and ash. The man I'd loved until the love had worn thin and brittle, eroded by 1,000 small neglects. Just another victim in shock? He stared at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something beyond frustration or professional bluster. I saw a sliver of fear. The fear of a man who's followed the script perfectly, the hero firefighter, the devoted public servant only to find the supporting actor, the patient wife waiting in the wings, has forgotten her lines. What is this? Ça va? He asked, his voice low. What are you trying to say? I leaned back against the stiff hospital pillows. The pain in my leg was a constant throb. The ache in my heart was a new, more profound agony. But my mind had never been clearer. I thought of the promises he'd broken, the lonely years, the way he'd look right through me sometimes, as if I were a piece of familiar furniture. I thought of the late calls that started a few months ago, the new, subtle cologne, the way he'd shield his phone screen. I dismissed it as paranoia, as the insecurity of a woman whose husband's first love was always, and would always be, the job. But tonight wasn't about the job. Tonight was a choice, a clear, unambiguous choice made in the roaring silence of a rainy highway. The old Serafina would have swallowed her pain. She would have accepted the gas station flowers and the logistical explanation. She would have told herself he was a hero, and heroes have to make hard calls. She would have faded a little more, apologized for her emotional reaction, and added this to the secret ledger of hurts she kept buried deep inside. But the woman pinned in that car for 23 minutes had died. Something new was being born in this sterile hospital room, something with a spine of steel and eyes that refused to look away. I'm saying it's over. Caleb. The words hung in the air, simple and final. He actually took a step back, as if I'd struck him. Then a harsh, disbelieving laugh escaped him. You're divorcing me because I did my job? Because I saved a life? Are you hearing yourself? You didn't save my life, I said quietly. You assessed it, found it sufficiently stable, and moved on to a more interesting project. That's not a marriage. Caleb, that's a triage tag. His face flushed, a mottled red creeping up his neck. The fear was gone, replaced by a defensive, towering anger. You're being hysterical. The concussion is talking. You have no idea what you're saying. After all I've given you, after all I've provided, this house, this life, that a beautiful, empty house in Maple Creek's nicest subdivision, a life of solitary dinners and canceled plans, a life of being firefighter Vance's wife, a supporting character in his endless, self-congratulatory story. I want you to leave, I said, turning my head to look out the window at the dark, rain-washed night. You can't be serious. Now, Serafina, be reasonable. We'll talk about this when you're discharged, when you're thinking clearly. I have never thought more clearly in my life. Get out. He stood there for a long moment, fists clenched at his sides. I could feel his gaze burning into the side of my face. The man who commanded burning buildings and mangled cars couldn't command this moment, and it infuriated him. Fine. He spat. The word sharp as a shard of glass. Have it your way, but you'll come to your senses. And when you do, we'll see about this little stunt. He stormed out, the door swinging shut behind him with a soft click that was more final than any slam. Silence descended, broken only by the steady beep of the heart monitor and the distant, muffled sounds of the hospital at night. I looked at the sad flowers on the table, a token gesture from a man who dealt in gestures, not substance. Then I reached for the call button, not for the nurse, for the phone. My fingers, steady despite everything, dialed a number I'd saved in my contacts months ago, after a particularly lonely night spent listening to a voicemail about another missed date. A number I'd never had the courage to call. It rang twice before a crisp, professional voice answered. Miranda Scott Law. Miranda? It's Serafina Vance. We met at the Women in Business luncheon last spring. A brief pause. Serafina. Yes, of course. The designer. What can I do for you? I took a deep breath, the air rattling in my bruised chest. Outside, the first hint of dawn was staining the sky a bruised purple. A new day, the first day of the rest of a different life. I need you to file for divorce, I said, my voice clear and unwavering in the quiet room. And I need you to make it hurt. The silence after Caleb left was louder than the crash. It was a ringing, hollow thing, filled only by the beep of the heart monitor, keeping time with my newfound resolve. I placed the hospital phone back in its cradle. The echo of Miranda Scott's decisive I'll be there first thing in the morning, still hanging in the air. I had just declared war. Now, I needed ammunition. My first source arrived with the sunrise, in the form of a tired-looking nurse named Gail. She bustled in to check my vitals, her eyes lingering on the untouched, wilting carnations. Rough night, honey? She asked, her voice a low, warm rasp as she wrapped the blood pressure cuff around my arm. You could say that. She nodded sympathetically, scribbling on my chart. I heard. The whole floor heard. Truth be told, your husband has a carrying voice when he's upset. I stayed quiet, letting her talk. People like to fill silences. She leaned in, adjusting my fore with a practice touch. You know, my nephew's in the firehouse. Engine 7. He's a good kid. She paused, her eyes meeting mine. They were sharp, knowing. He says Captain Vance has been distracted lately, taking a lot of personal time, missing the occasional softball game with the crew. My pulse jumped under the cuff. Gail noted it on the monitor, but said nothing. Distracted? I prompted gently. She gave a non-committal shrug, but her words were deliberate. Just talk around the house, is all. Firefighters are a tight bunch. They notice when one of their own starts bowing out of beers after shift, when he's always rushing off, saying he's got errands. She patted my hand. You get some rest. Press the button if you need anything. For anything. Her emphasis was clear. The seed was planted. Errands. My next visitor wasn't a friend. It was the concerned chief. Chief Donnelly. A bear of a man with a gray mustache and Caleb's unwavering loyalty. Filled the doorway just after 9 a.m. Serafina, he said, his voice a gravelly rumble of forced cheer. He held a larger, more respectable bouquet. Hell of a thing. How you holding up? I've been better. Chief, Caleb's a wreck, he said, placing the flowers on the windowsill, deliberately moving Caleb's sad ones aside. Absolutely torn up about it. He's down in the cafeteria, getting coffee. Couldn't sleep a wink. I didn't reply. I just waited. He shifted his weight, uncomfortable with the silence. Look, Sarah, about last night, what Caleb did, running to that other vehicle. I need you to understand. That's protocol. That's what we trained for. The first rule is to secure the scene. Help the most critically injured. He made a hard, fast call under extreme pressure. The kind of call that makes him the firefighter he is. He puffed out his chest slightly. The kind of call I'd expect from any of my men. Was she the most critically injured? I asked. My voice calm. Skylar? Chief Donnelly blinked. The girl in the Civic? Her arm was broken. Airbag burns. She was pretty shaken up. And my injuries? A broken leg, 2 broken ribs, a concussion, internal bruising. Was I stable enough to wait 23 minutes while he comforted her and wrapped his shirt around her shoulders? His face tightened. Now, see, that's the emotion talking. In a dynamic situation, was her car's fuel line actually compromised? I interrupted. Has the report come in? A slight hesitation, a flicker in his eyes. The investigation is ongoing. But Caleb reported a strong smell of gasoline. He acted on the information he had at the time. He acted that he'd also reported. I stored that away. I'm sure he did. Caleb is a hero in this town. Serafina, Chief Donnelly said, his tone firming, becoming paternalistic. What he did last night, it'll be in the papers. He saved that young woman's life. It'd be a damn shame, a tragedy, really, if a private marital misunderstanding, fueled by trauma and pain, were to tarnish that, to hurt the reputation of the house. People wouldn't understand. The threat was veiled, but it was there. Fall in line. Don't make a scene. Be the good firefighter's wife. I understand perfectly. Chief, I said, giving him a thin, close-lipped smile. Thank you for your concern. He left, looking vaguely unsatisfied, as if he'd delivered a speech that hadn't quite landed. The moment the door shut, I picked up my phone. My screen was cracked, but it worked. I opened a private browser window. Skylar, Quel accident, Maple Creek. Social media was a gaping wound of personal information. It took less than 10 minutes. Skylar Mitchell, age 26, worked as a marketing assistant for a local boutique fitness chain. Her profile was public, and there, sprinkled among the sunsets and gym selfies, were the clues I'd been blindly ignoring. A check-in at the Rusty Anchor 2 months ago. A bar Caleb mentioned going to with the guys from Ladder 3. In the background of a slightly blurry group photo, I could make out a familiar forearm, a distinctive tattoo of a phoenix rising from flames. Caleb's tattoo. Another post. 3 weeks back. A picture of a spectacular sunset over Willow Lake. The caption, "Thank you to my amazing guide for the best hike ever. Hashtag Hidden Lake, hashtag Adventure Buddy." The photo was of the view, not the guide, but I knew that particular, hard-to-reach vantage point. I'd begged Caleb to take me there for 2 years. He'd always said it was too tough a trail for me. He'd gone with Skylar. My hands were ice cold. I kept scrolling. Then I found it. A photo from a charity fundraiser for the fire department's Widows Orphans Fund, an event I'd been too sick with a migraine to attend 6 weeks ago. There was Caleb, in his dress blues, looking devastatingly handsome, and tucked beside him in the group shot, smiling up at him like he'd hung the moon, was Skylar. The caption read, "So inspired by our first responders. Thanks for the dance, Captain Vance." The winking emoji felt like a shiv to the kidney. The door opened, and I quickly closed the browser. It was Caleb. He looked like he'd aged a decade. His eyes were bloodshot, shadowed with genuine-looking anguish. He carried 2 coffees. "Sarah," he began, his voice rough. "We need to talk. Please." "There's nothing to talk about." "Caleb." I meant what I said. He set the coffees down and dragged the visitor's chair close to the bed, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. It was his heart-to-heart pose. "You're hurting. You're angry. I get it. Last night was a nightmare. But you're my wife. I love you. This is just a crisis. Couples get through this stuff." "By this stuff, do you mean you leaving me trapped in a car to play hero for your girlfriend? Or the 6 months of lies and errands that led up to it?" All the color drained from his face. The anguish was replaced, for a split second, by pure, unadulterated panic. It was there and gone, smoothed over into a mask of confused indignation. "What are you talking about? Girlfriend?" "Sarah, that's insane." Skylar Mitchell, age 26, marketing assistant, enjoys hikes to Willow Lake and charity dances when your wife has a migraine. I recited it flatly, watching him crumble. He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing. The performance was falling apart. "You've been checking up on me?" He finally managed, landing on offense as the best defense. "No, Caleb, you've been careless, and I've stopped being blind. It's not what you think." The words tumbled out, desperate. "She's just a friend, a fan of the department. She volunteered for the fundraiser committee. We've had coffee a few times to talk about event planning. That's it. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd overreact. You've been so sensitive lately, so suspicious of every little thing. You took her to our lake. It's a public park. You promised her everything would be okay. In the hallway, last night," he stood up abruptly, the chair scraping the floor. "I was comforting a trauma victim. For God's sake, are you listening to yourself? You're constructing some sick fantasy because you're jealous of a random girl I helped. This is the concussion talking, or it's the pain meds. I'm calling the doctor." "Call him," I said, my voice deadly calm. "Then call your lawyer, because mine is on her way." That stopped him cold. "Your lawyer?" "Miranda Scott. You met her at the Women in Business luncheon. You said she was too aggressive." The name landed like a physical blow. He knew her reputation. Maple Creek's most tenacious divorce attorney. A pit bull in a Prada suit. The fear was back in his eyes. Real this time. The fear of losing control. Of the perfect image cracking. "You can't be serious," he whispered. "I am. You'll ruin us. You'll ruin me." "No, Caleb, you did that. I'm just filing the paperwork." The mask shattered completely. The concerned husband, the wounded hero, the confused innocent. All of it vanished, burned away by a rage so hot and pure it stunned me. This was the man beneath the uniform, the one I'd caught glimpses of in closed doors and hissed arguments. "You bitch," he snarled, the word vicious and low. "After everything I've given you, the house, the cars, the life. You were nothing when I met you, a struggling artist, working in a damn coffee shop. I gave you stability. I gave you a name in this town. And this is how you thank me? By trying to destroy me over a misunderstanding?" I didn't flinch. The words hurt, but they were old hurts, echoes of quieter put-downs. "You gave me a cage," I said, "and I'm done." He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You think you can just walk away? You have no idea what you're up against. I'm Captain Caleb Vance, a decorated firefighter, a goddamn hero. You're a hysterical, injured wife with a head injury and an overactive imagination. Who do you think a judge will believe? Huh? Who do you think this town will believe?" He leaned over the bed, his face inches from mine. "You file for divorce, and I'll make you wish you'd died in that car. I'll take everything. The house, the savings, your little studio. I'll bury you in legal fees, so deep you'll be back serving lattes by Christmas, and everyone will know you're the crazy, ungrateful wife who abandoned her husband because he was too much of a hero." The door opened. A woman stood there, immaculate in a tailored cream suit, a leather folio under her arm. Her blonde hair was in a sharp bob. Her eyes, behind stylish glasses, took in the scene in a millisecond. Caleb looming over me, his face contorted with rage. Me lying pale and still in the bed. "Mr. Vance," Miranda Scott said, her voice cool and dry as a martini, "I'd advise you to step away from my client, unless you'd like me to add a restraining order to the initial filing, effective immediately." Caleb jerked back as if burned. He looked from Miranda's unimpressed face to mine. He saw no fear there, only cold, settled certainty. The panic returned, mixed with the dawning realization that he'd just shown his worst self to the one person he shouldn't have. "This isn't over," he hissed at me, grabbing his jacket. "It is for you," I said quietly. He stormed out, shoving past Miranda without a word. Miranda closed the door softly and walked to my bedside. She pulled a digital recorder from her pocket and placed it on the tray table. I hope you don't mind. I got the tail end of that. It's always useful to have a client's spouse confirm their character in their own words. She gave me a small, razor-sharp smile. Now, Serafina, let's begin. Tell me everything. And by everything, I mean everything. For the next hour, I talked. I told her about the loneliness, the missed events, the gradual erasure of my life. I showed her the social media posts. I told her about the 23 minutes, the shirt, the promise in the hallway. Miranda listened, taking precise notes. When I finished, she nodded. Emotional abandonment, financial control, constructive desertion, and, of course, adultery. The fact that he prioritized her duo in a life-threatening situation, given their relationship, is a powerful point for irreconcilable differences and his disregard for your safety. The social media is good. We'll need more. I'll have my investigator pull phone records, credit card statements, the usual. He's right about one thing, that his public image is a weapon. We need to blunt it. We need witnesses. The nurse who was just in here, Gail, her nephew is in the firehouse. Miranda's eyes gleamed. Perfect. We'll need to move quickly before he can spin his narrative. Your immediate focus is to get better and to not say a word to anyone. Not a word. Let him be the one to get angry. Let him be the one to make mistakes. She left with a firm handshake and a stack of paperwork for me to sign when I was able. The silence returned. But it was different now. It was the quiet of a battlefield after the first shot has been fired. 2 days later, I was discharged. Rachel, my best friend since college, was there to pick me up, her face a storm cloud of fury and concern. She helped me navigate the wheelchair out of the hospital, my leg in a proper cast, my ribs tightly bound. We didn't go home. We went to her apartment. You're staying with me until that bastard is out of your house, she said, her tone brooking no argument. As we pulled into her parking lot, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hope you're feeling better. Mrs. Vance, I'm so sorry about everything. I had no idea things were so complicated. Caleb is just such a good man. He's been so kind to me. I hope we can all move past this. Skylar. I stared at the screen. The audacity. The faux innocence. The subtle dig so complicated. The claim, my guide. Rachel snatched the phone. Read it. And let out a stream of expletives that would make a sailor blush. Oh, hell no. This little. She grabbed my phone and typed a reply before I could stop her. She showed me the screen. New phone. Who dis? A laugh, raw and unexpected, burst from my throat. It hurt my ribs, but it was the best pain I'd ever felt. Rachel hit send. We got inside, and she settled me on her couch with a blanket and a glass of water. The apartment was warm, cluttered, alive, to the opposite of my sterile, museum-perfect house. I looked at my phone. My lock screen was still a picture of Caleb and me, smiling on a beach vacation that felt like a lifetime ago. His arm was around me, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. My finger hovered over the screen. For 10 years, I'd been Mrs. Caleb Vance, the firefighter's wife, the supportive spouse, the patient woman. I opened the photo, tapped the trash can icon, delete. Then I opened my photos, picture after picture. Christmases where he'd been called away, birthdays with an empty chair, me, alone, in our beautiful, empty house, him, in uniform, accepting awards, him, smiling in group shots where I was always just outside the frame. One by one, I deleted them all. Each click was a stitch removed from a wound that had been suffocating me. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. Rachel watched me, a slow smile spreading across her face. There she is, she whispered. There's my Serafina. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Caleb. The message was long, a rambling paragraph swinging wildly between apologies, accusations, and pleas. You're making a huge mistake. I love you. We can get counseling. Don't throw 10 years away. Think of what people will say. Skylar means nothing. It was you I was coming back for. I didn't read past the first line. I tapped his name, scrolled to the bottom, and selected block contact. I leaned back against the cushions, the weight of the phone in my hand feeling lighter than it had in years. The battle lines were drawn. The first, hardest shots had been fired. The old Serafina, the one who waited patiently in the wreckage, was gone, deleted pixel by pixel. The woman on the couch, bruised and broken but fiercely alive, had a lawyer, a best friend, and a cold, clear fury that was sharper than any surgeon's scalpel. The cost of the truth was going to be everything, and I was finally ready to make him pay. The next 3 weeks were a war fought in whispers and legal documents. I stayed at Rachel's apartment, sleeping on her pull-out couch, surrounded by the chaos of her life. Piles of fashion magazines, half-empty coffee mugs, her cat Mr. Whiskers, who seemed to sense I needed company and curled up on my broken leg every night. My phone stayed silent. Caleb, blocked. His friends, his family, the entire ecosystem of Maple Creek's firefighter community. They could reach me through Miranda. That was the deal. I was in quarantine, healing my body and building my case. But Caleb didn't stay silent. He couldn't. The man needed an audience the way a fire needs oxygen. He's everywhere, Rachel said one evening, throwing her laptop on the coffee table. She'd pulled up the Maple Creek Gazette's website. There, above the fold, was a photo of Caleb at a city council meeting, receiving a Community Hero Award. The headline read, "Local Firefighter Saves Woman from Fiery Crash. Wife files for divorce days later." Below it, the comment section was a cesspool. What kind of woman leaves a hero? She must be crazy. I heard she was having an affair. Poor Captain Vance, dealing with tragedy at work and at home. They're spinning it, I said, my voice flat, making me the villain. Let them, Rachel said, snapping the laptop shut. Mud sticks, but truth bleaches. Miranda's investigator is digging. Give it time. Time. The word felt like a luxury I didn't have. Every day, another whisper campaign. A client of my design studio called to cancel a contract, citing personal reasons. A mutual friend sent along, pitying text about how she hoped I was getting the help I needed. Even my mother called, her voice dripping with disapproval, asking if I'd thought about marriage counseling. I raised you better than this, Serafina, she said, her tone clipped and cold. A marriage is a commitment. You don't throw it away over one bad night. It wasn't one bad night, Mom. It was 10 years of them. He's a good provider. He's respected. Do you know how many women would kill for what you have? Then maybe one of them should have him. She hung up. I didn't cry. I was done crying. The break came on a Thursday afternoon, 3 weeks and 2 days after the crash. I was at Rachel's kitchen table, sketching designs for a new collection that's something bold, angular, armor-like, fashion as warfare. Miranda called, her voice carrying a rare note of triumph. Serafina, I need you to come to my office. I have something you need to see. What is it? Phone records, credit card statements, and a witness statement from someone at the firehouse who's willing to talk. Off the record. For now. But it's enough. I was in a cab within 10 minutes, my crutches clattering against the seat. Miranda's office was in a converted Victorian house on Elm Street. All dark wood and leather chairs designed to intimidate. She met me in the lobby, a thick folder in her hands. Sit down, she said, gesturing to a chair. She didn't wait for me to settle before she started laying out the evidence. The phone records were damning. Over the past 6 months, Caleb had exchanged over 4,000 texts with a number registered to Skylar Mitchell. 4,000, many of them late at night, during his supposed overtime shifts. The credit card statements showed dinners at expensive restaurants, hotel charges at a place 30 miles out of town, far enough to avoid gossip, close enough for convenience. He's been careful with cash, Miranda said, sliding a photo across the desk, but not careful enough. This is from a security camera at the Lakeside Inn. Date, stamp matches a night he told you he was on a 48-hour shift. The photo was grainy, but unmistakable. Caleb and Skylar, walking into a hotel room. His hand was on the small of her back. She was laughing, looking up at him with that same worshipful expression I'd seen in the hospital hallway. I stared at the image. I expected pain. I expected rage. Instead, I felt a strange, hollow relief. The confirmation I'd been dreading was finally here, and it set me free. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I was right. There's more, Miranda said, pulling out a typed statement. This is from a firefighter named Derek Hayes. He's been with Engine 7 for 5 years. He says Caleb has been different for months. Short-tempered, distracted, skipping drills. Derek also says he overheard Caleb on the phone a week before the crash, arguing with someone. He assumes Skylar about being patient. The exact quote Derek remembers is, "Just give me time to handle things. She's not going to make this easy." She, I said quietly. Me. Almost certainly. I looked up at Miranda. When can we go to court? Soon. I've filed a motion for a temporary restraining order based on his behavior in the hospital. We have a hearing in 2 weeks. But Serafina, I need you to understand something. Caleb's lawyers are going to fight dirty. They're going to paint you as unstable, bitter, vengeful. They'll use your injuries against you. Claim you're suffering from PTSD, that you're not in your right mind. They'll drag this out as long as they can. Let them, I said, my voice steady. I've been underestimated my whole life. I'm done being underestimated. Miranda studied me for a long moment, a hint of respect in her eyes. Good, because I have one more thing. Derek Hayes is willing to testify, but he's scared. He needs to know you won't back down, that you'll see this through. I met her gaze. Tell him I'll be there, front row, and I'm not going anywhere. The hearing was held in the Maple Creek Family Court, a grim, beige building that smelled of stale coffee and anxiety. I wore a navy blue dress, professional, serious, not a hint of vulnerability. Rachel sat behind me in the gallery, a silent pillar of support. Across the aisle, Caleb's side of the courtroom was packed. His mother, his brothers, a cluster of firefighters in uniform. They glared at me like I was the enemy. Caleb sat at the defendant's table, dressed in a sharp suit instead of his uniform. Strategic. He wanted to look like a businessman, not a firefighter. His lawyer, a silver-haired shark named Harrison Cole, was known for defending cops and politicians accused of misconduct. He specialized in intimidation. Judge Morrison, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, called the court to order. We are here for the preliminary hearing in the matter of Vance versus Vance. Mrs. Vance has filed for dissolution of marriage on grounds of irreconcilable differences, citing emotional abandonment and adultery. Mr. Vance contests. Harrison Cole stood first, his voice smooth as oil. Your Honor, my client is a decorated fire captain and a pillar of this community. He has served Maple Creek faithfully for 15 years. The allegations made by Mrs. Vance are the product of trauma and confusion following a tragic accident. She is lashing out, seeking to blame my client for circumstances beyond his control. He turned to look at me, his eyes cold. Mrs. Vance suffered significant injuries in the crash. She was on powerful pain medication. Her memory of events is unreliable at best. Meanwhile, my client acted heroically, saving a young woman's life. And for this, he is being punished. Miranda rose, calm and deliberate. Your Honor, the petitioner does not contest Mr. Vance's actions at the crash site. She contests his actions in the 6 months prior. We have evidence. Phone records, credit card statements, photographic proof, and a sworn affidavit that Mr. Vance engaged in an extramarital affair with Ms. Schuyler Mitchell. We have evidence that he neglected his marital duties, lied repeatedly about his whereabouts, and subjected Mrs. Vance to emotional abuse. She held up the photo from the Lakeside Inn. This is Mr. Vance. On a night, he claimed to be working a 48-hour shift, entering a hotel room with Ms. Mitchell. This is not a hero. This is a man who betrayed his vows. The courtroom stirred. Caleb's mother let out a sharp gasp. Caleb himself remained still, but I saw the muscle in his jaw twitch. Harrison Cole was on his feet instantly. Objection, Your Honor. This evidence has not been properly authenticated. The photo could be doctored. The phone records could be misinterpreted. My client maintains that his relationship with Ms. Mitchell was purely professional. Professional. Miranda's voice dripped with disbelief. 4,000 texts in 6 months? Dinners at romantic restaurants? Hotel rooms? That's a very busy, professional relationship. Mr. Cole. Judge Morrison held up a hand. Enough. I've reviewed the evidence submitted by both parties. Mrs. Vance's claims are supported by substantial documentation. Mr. Vance's counterclaims are, at this point, unsupported assertions. Caleb's lawyer started to speak, but the judge cut him off. I'm granting Mrs. Vance's request for a temporary restraining order. Mr. Vance is to vacate the marital residence within 48 hours. He is to have no contact with Mrs. Vance except through legal counsel. A full evidentiary hearing will be scheduled in 60 days. Caleb shot to his feet. This is ridiculous. She's lying. She's trying to destroy me. Sit down. Mr. Vance. Judge Morrison said, her voice like a whip crack, or I will hold you in contempt. He's Saturday, but his eyes burned into me. Pure. Undiluted hatred. I held his gaze, unflinching. I had nothing left to fear from him. As the bailiff escorted me out, I passed Derek Hayes in the hallway. He was a stocky man in his 30s, his face lined with guilt and determination. He nodded at me once, a small, almost imperceptible gesture. I nodded back. The war was just beginning, but I had won the first battle. 2 weeks later, the news broke. The Maple Creek Gazette ran a follow-up article, this time with a very different angle. Fire captain's affair exposed. Phone records. Hotel receipts reveal secret relationship. The article included quotes from Derek Hayes, who spoke on the record about Caleb's changed behavior, his absences, his volatile temper. The comment section was a war zone. Half the town defended Caleb, calling Derek a traitor. The other half turned on him, demanding his resignation from the fire department. The mayor called for an internal investigation. Caleb was suspended pending review. I watched the press conference from Rachel's couch, a bowl of popcorn untouched in my lap. Caleb stood at a podium, flanked by his union representative and a PR consultant. He looked haggard, his eyes hollow, his voice strained. I want to apologize to the people of Maple Creek, he said, reading from a prepared statement. I have made mistakes. I have failed my wife, and I have failed this community. I am seeking professional help. I ask for your patience and your prayers as I work to rebuild my life. Patience, prayers. The man was still performing, still playing the role of the repentant sinner seeking redemption. He didn't mention me by name. He didn't apologize to me directly. He apologized to the town, as if I were just a footnote in his grand narrative. I muted the TV. He's still lying. I said, even now, he's a narcissist. Rachel replied, shaking her head. They can't help it. Everything is a stage, and everyone else is just an extra in their movie. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me open it. You think you've won, but you don't know the whole story. You don't know what I know. Meet me at the diner on Main Street tomorrow at noon. Come alone. S. Skylar. Rachel saw the text over my shoulder. Absolutely not. That's a trap. Probably. Then why are you smiling? Because she's scared. She's reaching out. That means she has something to say. And whatever it is, she thinks it hurts me, which means it probably helps me. I texted back, I'll be there. The Maple Creek Diner was a relic from another era. Red vinyl booths. A jukebox playing old country songs. The smell of bacon and coffee hanging in the air. I arrived early, choosing a booth near the back where I could see the door. My crutches were propped beside me, my cast a constant reminder of how far I'd come. Skylar walked in at exactly noon. She looked different than I remembered. Thinner, paler, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore no makeup, and her eyes were red-rimmed, as if she'd been crying. The confident, bubbly woman from the hospital hallway was gone. In her place was someone who looked haunted. She slid into the booth across from me, not meeting my eyes. Thanks for coming. You said I don't know the whole story. So tell me. She took a shaky breath. I'm not going to apologize. You probably hate me, and you have every right to. But I need you to understand something. I didn't know he was married. Not at first. I said nothing. Let her talk. We met at a fundraiser. He was charming, attentive. He told me he was separated, that his wife didn't understand him, that the marriage was basically over. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He's a firefighter, a hero. Everyone trusts him. She paused, her hands trembling around her coffee cup. By the time I found out the truth, I was in too deep. He told me he was going to leave you. He said he just needed time to handle things. He said you were unstable, that you'd threaten to take everything if he filed for divorce. He made me feel sorry for him. And you believed him. Yes. Her voice cracked. Because I was stupid. Because I wanted to believe him. Because he was good at lying. Istaditar. The guilt in her eyes was real. The fear was real. But I wasn't ready to forgive her. Not yet. Why are you telling me this now? Because he's not done. She looked up, meeting my eyes for the first time. He called me last night, begging me to lie for him, to say we were just friends, that the hotel room was a misunderstanding, that the texts were about charity work. He offered me money. He threatened me when I said no. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. I recorded the call. I thought you should have it. She played the recording. Caleb's voice filled the space between us, desperate and venomous. Skylar, listen to me. If you don't back me up, I'll lose everything. My job, my reputation, my pension. You owe me. I protected you. I kept your name out of it as long as I could. But if you screw me over, I'll make sure everyone knows you threw yourself at me, that you were obsessed, that you ruined my marriage. That's not true. Caleb, you know that's not true. Doesn't matter what's true. Matters what people believe. And they'll believe me. I'm Captain Caleb Vance. I'm a hero. You're just the other woman. Choose your side carefully. The recording ended. The silence in the booth was heavy. Why are you giving me this? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Skylar wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Because I'm tired of being his puppet. Because I don't want to be the villain in your story. Because maybe, if I help you, I can start to forgive myself. She slid the phone across the table. Take it. Do whatever you need to do. I'm done protecting him. I looked at the phone, then at her, the girl I'd hated, the symbol of my husband's betrayal, sitting across from me, broken and honest. I didn't forgive her, but I understood her. Thank you, I said, picking up the phone. She nodded, stood, and walked out of the diner without another word. I watched her go, the bell on the door chiming softly behind her. I had the recording. I had the evidence. I had the truth. And now, I had everything I needed to finish this. 1 year later, the air in the backstage of the New York Fashion Week tent didn't smell like smoke and betrayal. It smelled of steamed satin, hairspray, and pure, electric possibility. I stood in the wings, my fingers resting lightly on the black velvet curtain, and watched my models stride down the runway. My runway, the music, a pulsing, triumphant electronic beat, thrummed through the floor and up into my bones. Sarah, the Vogue editor, loved the asymmetrical wool coat. She asked for a closer look. Rachel hissed in my ear, her face flushed with excitement. She was my business partner now, the ruthless pragmatism to my creative vision. After the finale, I said, my eyes never leaving the stage. The collection was titled from the ashes. It was all sharp lines, architectural silhouettes, and hidden pockets, armor disguised as elegance. Each piece was a message, a declaration stitched in silk and wool. The final look appeared. A gown, not the soft, flowing thing I might have designed a lifetime ago. This was a column of liquid obsidian. One shoulder strap, a twisted rope of silver chainmail. The skirt slashed to the thigh, revealing trousers beneath. It was powerful, unapologetic, and mobile. The model, a fierce redhead with eyes like chips of ice, owned the runway. The applause that followed wasn't polite. It was a roar. I was pulled onto the stage for the designer's walk. The lights were blinding. The noise was a physical wave. I smiled, a real one that reached my eyes, and took my bow. In that moment, I wasn't Caleb Vance's ex-wife. I wasn't the woman from the Maple Creek gossip blogs. I was Seraphina Vance, designer. The phoenix on the program, Notes, wasn't just a theme. It was my biography. Later, in the chaos of the after-party at a sleek Soho loft, a familiar, calming presence materialized at my elbow, handing me a glass of champagne. To the woman of the hour, Daniel said, his blue eyes crinkling at the corners. He was a writer I'd met at a gallery opening 6 months prior. Quiet, observant, and solid in a way that felt like terra firma after a decade on shifting sand. To the man who didn't run for the hills when I said I was launching a collection in 6 months, I clinked my glass against his. Taking a sip, the bubbles tasted like victory. My phone buzzed in my clutch. I ignored it. It had been buzzing intermittently for weeks. Unknown numbers. Blocked IDs. I knew who it was. The final divorce decree. Delivered 2 months ago. Stripping him of the house. A significant portion of his pension, thanks to Miranda's forensic accounting and the waste of marital assets on his affair. And any claim to my burgeoning business had been a seismic shock. The internal investigation at the firehouse, bolstered by Derek Hayes' testimony and the damning recording Schuyler provided, had concluded with his termination for conduct unbecoming and misuse of department resources. The town's hero had fallen, and Maple Creek had a long memory. The calls had started then, desperate, angry, pleading. I never answered. I'd said everything I needed to say in a court of law. Everything okay? Daniel asked, his hand a warm, steady pressure on the small of my back. Perfect, I said, and for the first time in as long as I could remember. I meant it. The contrast couldn't have been starker. While I was toasting with champagne in Manhattan, Caleb was on his 3rd whiskey. Neat. In the dim, sticky haze of the Rusty Anchor, the same bar where, over a year ago, he'd first bought Schuyler a drink and spun his tale of the lonely, misunderstood hero. The bartender, a guy named Tony who'd known Caleb for years, slid the glass toward him with a sympathetic nod that felt like pity. Caleb scowled. Pity was all he got now. The respect, the automatic free drinks, the admiring glances gone, replaced by whispers and averted eyes. His phone, face up on the bar, lit up with a notification, a news alert from a New York fashion blog. Rising star Seraphina Vance dazzles at NYFW. The thumbnail was a picture of her, my ex-wife, looking like a goddamn queen in a sleek black pantsuit, laughing with a handsome, silver-haired man. He slammed his hand down on the phone. The couple at the end of the bar jumped. Easy. Kepen, Tony said, his tone cautious. Don't call me that. Caleb snarled. tossing back the whiskey. It burned, but not enough to cauterize the white-hot rage in his gut. He was ruined, fired, disgraced. The quick settlement with Skylar had eaten most of his savings. A quiet payoff to prevent her from going to the press with more details. Not that it mattered. The recording had done the job. He could still hear his own voice, tinny and ugly, through his lawyer's speakerphone during the deposition. Choose your side carefully. He'd chosen wrong. He'd chosen the meek, adoring wife who would always forgive him, the town that would always cheer him. He'd underestimated the meek wife. He'd forgotten that even embers, if left smoldering long enough, could ignite an inferno. He stumbled out of the bar into the chilly Maple Creek night. He didn't go to his sad, one-bedroom apartment over the hardware store. He got in his truck, the engine coughing to life, and drove on autopilot. He knew the route by heart. He'd driven it 1,000 times, coming home to her, to the house that was no longer his. The modern townhouse in the Brookside development was dark except for the soft glow of the porch light. Her porch light. His truck idled at the curb. He saw the changes. The elegant, minimalist furniture visible through the front window was new. The bold, abstract painting on the wall, that was hers. She'd always talked about buying art, and he'd always said it was a waste of money. He saw a shadow move past the window, a tall, lean shadow that wasn't hers. The writer, Daniel, the guy from the articles, the one who was there now, in his house, with his wife, ex-wife. The correction was a fresh cut every time. A blinding, irrational impulse took hold. He killed the engine, got out, and marched up the walkway. He didn't have a plan. He just needed to see her, to make her see him, to make her understand what she'd done. He punched the doorbell, once, twice, a third time, holding it down. The porch light flipped on, flooding him in its harsh glare. The door opened, not on the chain. She stood there, backlit, in soft-looking gray lounge pants and a simple white tee. Her hair was loose, shorter than she used to wear it, framing a face that looked younger, calmer, utterly at peace. The sight of that peace enraged him more than any anger ever could. Caleb! She said his name like she was identifying a minor nuisance. A moth at the screen door. It's after midnight. We need to talk, he said, his voice slurring slightly from the whiskey. We have nothing to talk about. The lawyers have done all the talking for us. You need to leave. Please, Sarah. The pleading tone crept in, the one that used to work when he'd come home late, smelling of another woman's perfume disguised as smoke. Just 5 minutes. I'm drowning here. You have to help me. You have to tell them to take me back. At the house. You can talk to the chief. He'll listen to you. She stared at him, and in her eyes, he saw no hatred, no fury. He saw a profound, unsettling pity. It was worse than contempt. Tell them what? Caleb? That you're a good man who made a mistake? You're not a good man, and that wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. 100 choices. You chose her. You chose the lie. You chose to leave me in that car. I was doing my job. The old defense erupted, fueled by bourbon and desperation. No, she said, her voice quiet, final. You were playing the hero for an audience of one. Your job was the excuse. It was always the excuse. For everything. Behind her, Daniel appeared in the hallway. He didn't say anything, didn't posture. He just stood there, a silent, steady presence, a witness. Caleb felt a fresh wave of humiliation. Is this him? Caleb spat, gesturing vaguely past her. This is why. You traded me in for some pencil pusher? A flicker of something amusement crossed Seraphina's face. I didn't trade you in. Caleb, I threw the whole model out. It was defective. She took a slow breath. You came here wanting something from me. An apology, forgiveness, a character reference. You have nothing left to take from me, and I have nothing left to give you. Not even my anger. It's gone. I burned it for fuel, and I built a new life with the heat. He fumbled in his jacket pocket, pulling out a crumpled envelope. I wrote this. For you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sarah. For everything. Please. Just read it. He thrust it toward her. She looked at the envelope, then at his face, the ravaged, pleading, pathetic face of the man who had once been her whole world. She didn't take it. Instead, she reached out and plucked it from his trembling fingers. In one smooth, deliberate motion, she tore the envelope in half. Then she tore it again and again, letting the pieces flutter to the welcome mat like confetti at the world's saddest party. You saved her first, she said, her gaze locking with his. The words weren't shouted. They were a simple, devastating statement of fact. In that moment, you killed the last thing I felt for you. But you made one crucial error. Caleb, you assumed I'd die in the wreckage with it. She took a small step back. Goodbye. Caleb, don't come back here. The next time, I won't answer the door. I'll call the police. And I doubt even Maple Creek's finest will be eager to help you anymore. She closed the door. The lock clicked into place with a sound of terrible finality. Caleb stood on the porch, staring at the shredded pieces of his apology, swimming in the golden pool of light that no longer welcomed him home. The chill seeped through his jacket. He was outside. He would always be outside. 2 nights later, I stood on the balcony of a penthouse suite at the Pierre Hotel, overlooking a glittering Central Park. The charity gala for the Artists' Protection League swirled behind me, a symphony of jewels and laughter. I held a flute of sparkling water, the city lights reflecting in the glass. Daniel joined me, slipping an arm around my waist. They're eating you up in there, the Cinderella of the design world. He mimicked a society columnist's tone. I leaned into his side, the silk of my green gown a sample from the new collection whispering against his tuxedo. Cinderella had a fairy godmother. I had a good lawyer and a better best friend. He laughed, the sound warm in the cool night air, and a formidable amount of talent. Don't sell yourself short. Seraphina Vance. He said my full name like it was a title he was proud of. My phone buzzed in the tiny sequin clutch on the balcony rail. I glanced at it. A text from Rachel. Turn on channel 7. Now. Frowning, I took the phone. Daniel, sensing the shift, stayed quiet. I found a live news stream. The banner at the bottom read, Maple Creek Scandal. New revelations. On screen, looking pale but determined under the harsh lights of a news studio, was Skylar Mitchell. She was being interviewed. I was manipulated, she was saying. Her voice clear despite a slight tremor. I was young, impressionable, and I believed the story of a lonely hero in a broken marriage. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm here to finally tell the complete truth, because other women deserve to know the man behind the uniform. Captain Vance didn't just betray his wife. He betrayed the public's trust. He used his position, his status, to create a narrative where he was the victim, and we were all just supporting characters. The recording I provided only shows a fraction of the coercion. The lies. I lowered the phone. I hadn't expected this. After the settlement, Skylar had left town. I'd heard she'd moved south. I'd never contacted her again. This was her choice, her own phoenix moment, rising from the ashes of the mess he'd made of her life. 2. You okay? Daniel asked softly. I looked out at the endless, shining grid of the city, a world away from Maple Creek's quiet, judgmental streets. I thought of the woman I was a year ago, pinned and waiting. I thought of the shredded apology on the porch. I thought of the gown on the runway, the applause, the quiet man beside me who asked for nothing but my happiness. I'm more than okay, I said, turning off the phone and letting the night swallow the image of Caleb's final, public unmasking. I'm free, down on the street, 60 floors below. A man in a worn jacket stood in the shadows, looking up at the glittering tower. He couldn't see her, but he knew she was there, In the world that had once been a dream she'd talked about over cold dinners. A dream he'd told her was impractical. The sounds of the gala laughter, music, the clink of crystal that drifted down to him like echoes from a different planet. He had come to New York on a desperate, stupid impulse, maxing out his last credit card for the bus ticket. He'd thought, he didn't know what he'd thought, that he'd see her, and she'd see him, and something would reset, snap back into place. But standing there, a ghost at the feast of her new life, the final, crushing truth settled over him. It wasn't that he had lost her. It was that she was never his to lose. She had been a captive audience, and he had mistaken her silence for applause. Now the curtain had fallen, the house lights were up, and she had walked out of the theater, leaving him alone on a dark, empty stage, with no character left to play, and no one left to play for. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the indifferent, anonymous pulse of the city. He was a footnote in her story, and she was the title of his tragedy. On the balcony, Serafina felt a slight, inexplicable chill. She shivered. Daniel pulled her closer, sharing his warmth. She smiled up at him, then turned her back firmly on the darkness below, and walked inside, toward the light, and the music, and the life she had built for herself. Not from the ashes, but in spite of them. Whole, at last, and gloriously, unforgettably, free.